Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and it is time to talk about that state of play. So, first off, I thought it was really good. I enjoyed what I got to see. Unfortunately, there were some things missing. For me, it was all Resident Evil. Like, I've been waiting for that Code Veronica stuff, RE9 DLC announcement. I'm hoping, honestly, that when they talk about RE9, they say there's a VR update. Like, hey, VR is coming out like right now or in like 2 weeks, and then DLC in like a couple months. Hopefully not in September. Oh my God, we're gonna talk about that. But sadly, no Resident Evil, so I'm hoping, somewhere during SGF, we'll get our Resident Evil stuff and I'll be happy there. But I got just about everything else. I got Wolverine, I got Control, I got Onimusha. Once again, a lot of September stuff. We did get some stuff that I wasn't expecting. The new game, I think it was Kimura, if I'm not mistaken, but, pseudo open world, 3-player yokai action beat 'em up game with like a really good art style that I truly hope has a photo mode attached to it because it looks amazing. So that was interesting. I was like, okay, this, I think that was like the only new thing, even though they call like the God of War thing at the end a new IP. I guess because they put Lava at the end, it counts as a new IP. I don't know, but I'm like, it's God of War. It's in the God of War franchise. I was happy with that. I know there are people that they were already like, that's not gonna work. I was curious. We'll do it in order. That's how we'll do it. We'll do it in order. We'll start with Wolverine. Wolverine looked insanely bloody, insanely gruesome. He kills like the first 2 people he killed was just like, oh dang, that's crazy. And then he reaches over, and there was just so much blood. And I was like, this is great. It was like the Mike mode in Ghost of Yote, where it was like, here's just a bunch of extra blood. That's base level. That's base level for Wolverine. So we got to see some cool stuff with that. And they didn't really, I can't say they answered the question, but because they had Mystique, they did that little thing where it's like, oh, it's a redhead with blue and stuff. And then I was like, okay, so he doesn't know who Mystique is. And then Jean shows up, which of course, that was in the leaks from a long time ago, but I hadn't really seen him. And I had heard it, but I was like, hey, I'll wait and see if that's official. It is official now. Jean is in it. The thing that's different though, is that he doesn't know who Jean is. So this is like before he knew who the X-Men were. This isn't like a, regardless of him being on like 1,800 teams, Wolverine is always doing something by himself. Like this could have he could have easily known who Jean was, but they decided to make it where he doesn't. And that I thought was interesting. That actually has me super curious where the story is headed, because now it's a bunch of characters that he doesn't know. So he doesn't know, I would assume he doesn't know Mystique. He'll know Sabretooth, which Sabretooth was in it, and I gotta say, there are 2 dudes that showed up today in 2 different Marvel games that had me hyped. And I got to see Sabretooth, which is gonna be insane, because I'm telling you, most people don't understand how insanely gruesome Sabretooth really is. Like, that dude is nuts. And then the other guy is Carnage in Marvel Tokon, which was fantastic to see. Obviously, that won't be super bloody or anything, but they should totally do that. Like, I don't know how they're gonna pull that for like Spider-Man 3, but I'm like, admittedly, whatever Carnage does needs to be like rated M for mature like Wolverine. Like, honestly, they could just make that its own like very mature DLC, and I think that would actually work a little bit better. Like a much darker Spider-Man game, it would be awesome. But it's gonna be what it's gonna be, but I'm just saying, Carnage actually would fit very much in line with everything going on in the Wolverine game. All the blood and all the chaos, Carnage would fit right in there. But got to see Sabretooth, got to see a little bit more of Omega Red. We got to see Wolverine in his patch outfit. So he's got the suit with the eye patch, which is very awesome. Who knows if that's in the actual, like, just as you play throughout, you go through that, or if that's a flashback mission. So there are things to be curious about, because he has, many different modes as the character just throughout time. So I'm excited to see what we do with that. It looked like he also was fighting the Hand, which is absolutely insane. So I don't know, I don't know. There was supposed to be some stuff in Spider-Man where there were like some slight references to the Hand, and everybody thought like, hey, we're getting story DLC and it's gonna involve like Daredevil in the gang. And that never happened. But I don't know. Now we got the Hand. At least or it was just a random red ninja. But for me, you show up in red, you ain't Deadpool, you're the Hand. So that's that's how I'm looking at it. I'm just saying, it just seems to be there. So I'm very excited for that. I like the traversal, once again, from kind of some of the leaks and stuff like that. I was like, all right, I'm fine. They make it like the over-the-top version. He did a couple of giant leaps where I was like, that doesn't, even for comic books, I was like he jumped across the entire bridge. After he blew up that bridge, he jumped off the wall and flew all the way across the bridge. I was like, that's impossible. But I was fine with it because it ended in bloody murder. It was pretty cool. Seems fun. You get multiple like specialty moves, which I think is pretty cool. Like it looked like they were like, okay, X-Men Origins Wolverine is based off of a pretty bad movie. But that game It's God tier. It is one of the best, like licensed games that's out there. That game is super fun. It can get repetitive, over time, but ultimately that game is super fun. Once again, regeneration and the body parts being blown apart, stuff like that. That's super cool. I don't know how that's gonna work. They might not even count it as part of the story, because Spider-Man has that too. Like you can have the damage, and then you once you start the next mission or whatever, the suit's brand new and fresh. So it might just be like that. But it looked gross. Like it was blown apart and had chunks coming off of him. I was like, this is pretty sweet. And then there was one very specific portion, and it was right before they did the motorcycle sequence, where he was fighting the last dude, and there was a forklift, and all I could think, I was having flashbacks. I was like, please put him on the fork. I was like, please put him on the thing. And then he like shoved him or kicked him or whatever, and he just got impaled. And I was like, yes, this is all I need. He's got a couple special moves. He had like the charging attack where he like rammed somebody and then slammed him into the wall and he was slicing him up. He had the crazy spin move. I was like, this is it. Just do like the specialty moves that he always has. Put him on the 4 buttons. You hit like L1 or L2 or whatever, and you just hit a face button and then you go crazy. And that's all I need. Like it seems like everything that I wanted from it is right there. They even showed off what happens if you have. I think you have to have the adrenaline up to do that reheal that he did, where like he died and then you just button mash to heal all your health. He had like, I think at least one bar of like the rage meter, Berserker Rage. So I was like, okay, I think that's how they do it. I don't know if that's every single time, or maybe you get more time depending on how much of like the Berserker Rage you actually have. Because he went to full health, and I was like, I could definitely see that being a thing where you don't always go to full health, because that would also be crazy because it's like every single time. But I like that mechanic, and I'm excited to see more of the moves come out. Him teaming up with Jean, I thought was like absolutely insane. Like she was picking people up and he was just jumping at them, or they would have like combo moves. Like he stabbed one dude and then she picked both of them up just to spin them around and give him like the assist on the dunk. I was like, that's crazy. But I loved it. I was like, okay, I'm excited to see where this goes. Him not knowing who the X-Men are, and also it started with the Morlocks, which I thought was pretty interesting, because it seemed, if it's before you even met Jean in the game, it seems like it's a pretty early level, so I'm looking forward to that for sure. Like I was already excited, and then I was like, okay, super cool. And we already knew that was coming out in September. Unfortunately, it's being, joined by a lot of other things. But moving on to Marvel Tokon, we got, I think it was the Knights of Doom, if I'm not mistaken. So they showed all of Doom's team, like his whole team was brand new characters. We got Magneto, which of course they had to do, and Magneto's awesome. So they had to do Magneto. He looks fantastic. Then they threw in Green Goblin, and it was like, well, that's amazing. And he's played by Steve Bloom, which means Josh Keaton is Spider-Man, Steve Bloom is Green Goblin. It's Spectacular Spider-Man again. And like he did, like, it was so good. I was like, man, this once again, just beautiful flashbacks. I'm like, there has to be a line in there somewhere, and it might have been one of the lines they said in the actual trailer, but I'm like, there has to be some like direct lines that are literally taken from Spectacular Spider-Man. They got both the actors together. They have to do it. They almost have no choice. So I hope that's the case, because that was amazing. It was like, hey, Steve Bloom and Josh Keaton is Spider-Man. We got Spectacular Spider-Man again. So I'm super hyped for that. And then of course, Carnage. Carnage looked amazing. He was talking about, let me kill him and all this stuff. Yeah, all of that, perfect. He looked really cool. His end move was like a really crazy giant shark with like a billion teeth. Like, it was great. Like, all of that was fantastic. And then the last team we have is Ghost Rider's team. And I think everyone's saying the same thing. It's like, it's gonna be Midnight Suns. Like, I think Blade is gonna, I think Blade is gonna be in this game. And that's gonna be sick. Like, if Blade shows up in this game, that's gonna be crazy. But I think Blade is gonna show up. It just makes sense. But they could do Moon Knight. They got, Ghost Rider, Moon Knight, Blade, and then I don't know who else would be on the team. I guess another person, but there are lots of options. They could do, well, if they wanted to, they could actually do Doctor Strange. That wouldn't be too bad. I wouldn't hate that. But I really want to see Blade. Like, more than anything, I will, Blade is like my number one. I would love to see Blade on that game. But Marvel Tokon, it's looking good. The characters are looking great. One more team reveal, and I'm excited for that. So we'll see how that all pans out, but I'm pulling for Blade. I'm glad we got Carnage. I love Venom, don't get me wrong, but Carnage never gets any representation. Much like Sabretooth, it's the same thing where I'm like, obviously, Marvel Tokon is not gonna be that bloody. It's full, it's gonna be nice and anime style. But Carnage needs some real serious representation. So I was happy to see him. Just at the very least, just in the game, the style is really good. It's very akin to Marvel vs. Capcom. Like, he had one move that was straight up the Venom move with like all the slashing and stuff. I was like, that is straight up the Marvel vs. Capcom attack from Venom, which was great. It was still cool to see that representation. So I was happy with that. So on the Marvel front, like kicking things off, I thought we got some pretty good stuff. And then after that, I'm just gonna jump to like my big highlights. Control looked amazing. I was super hyped for that. The game Ill looked really crazy, and I'm like, okay, they have my interest. I don't remember if I saw a trailer for that before. I think that might have been the one we saw where the dude was like, they're like a crazy set of monsters like coming down a tunnel or something like that. I'm pretty sure maybe we've seen this before. It reminded me of the game where the dude was like in the subway or something and had like a old school camera, but that's a different game for sure. But it looked crazy and gruesome and bloody and gory, and I was like, sure. He punched a baby in the face, and I was like, all right, crazy, bloody, gross horror game, I'm in. Like, you know, horror is my favorite genre. I'm always gonna give that sort of stuff a shot. So that looked great. Since we're, you know, I'm in the horror realm, I'll just jump right to Silent Hill F. That looks really good. I'm curious to see how that's gonna pan out. I probably won't be getting it because, of course, it comes out in September, and I was like, damn, that blows. I haven't even played Silent Hill F, admittedly. So, you know, it'll be on the back burner, but it's on the list. It looks good. But I was like, ooh, September. Yeah, that's dead to me, unfortunately, because Control is coming out in September as well, as is Wolverine. But those two are separate. Wolverine is the 12th. Control was the 24th/25th. It was one of those. And it was like, okay, that might work. It might not. Admittedly, we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. But I was like, okay, Control is coming out. I was super hyped. We got to see like a couple of characters from the first game and like their new styles and designs. That was super cool. I was very happy to see that. I was like, okay, we got this character back. We got this character back. I was like, this is awesome. So I'm hyped for that game. The action looked really good. The trailer was really good. I thought that was a great trailer, especially during like some of the portions where he was just like running and it was like just these open like landscape shots. It looked like, I was like, this is really good. I cannot wait to mess around with photo mode in that game. That is going to be crazy. That's going to have some amazing photos taken of it. But I've been hyped for that game, and that was the one I was waiting for. I was like, Resident Evil was number 1, Control was number 2. Control 2 was the number 2 game. I was like, guaranteed Resident Evil, guaranteed Control, guaranteed Wolverine, admittedly. But I was kind of waiting. I was like, okay, we will see what happens, because I was waiting to see if Wolverine was going to end up popping up around Control, and I was like, if a choice must be made, it will be Control. Like Control takes precedence over everything else. So Control is the number 1 game of September, although Wolverine does come out first. So I can at least play both. I can try to, make that happen real quick, and that should be fine. But Control looked great. I was super happy for that. And then, unfortunately, another game that looks great that's coming out, I'm pretty sure on the same day. I have to check the actual dates because there were so many in September. I'm like, I think 2 of them were right next to each other or literally on the same day, and I think it was Control and Onimusha, which is very unfortunate because Onimusha looked really good, and I've been waiting for I was like, they gotta finally just give us the date. Like, that was the one thing. It was like, we had Resident Evil, we knew when Pragmata was coming out way before that came out, and it was like, Onimusha is the last one, and then they dropped it. Here's the date, and here's a demo if you want to play it. And as you can see by the footage, if you're still watching, I played the crap out of that demo. I spent like almost 2.5 hours on it, mostly because I was in photo mode for a long time. I got a buttload of pictures just from that one demo. Like, I probably could have went through that demo in like half the time, but it was fun. I was happy to finally be able to play it because I could tell, I was like, this feels like one of those games where watching it was never like the most exciting thing from like all the footage that we'd had before. I was like, I'm not really getting a ton from it, but it was Onimusha, and I could tell, like, just from watching, I was like, I can tell I'd enjoy playing it. It just doesn't look very fun to play because Onimusha's never been, Onimusha's never been like the Devil May Cry thing where it's like full on hack and slash. So I was curious, like, all right, well, how are they gonna blend those elements together? How does that work? And I thought they did a great job. Like, once again, finally getting my hands on it and doing it myself, I thought it was great. I was like, okay, everything has like a pseudo counter to it. You can do the quick dodge at the last minute. You can do the parry. You can do like there's like a defense move where you can push up against the enemies. Like, it'll deflect arrows, but if you do it with someone who's coming at you with a sword, it'll like kind of stun them a little bit. And I was like, this is really cool. Grabs have their own reversals as well. And I was like, okay, I can appreciate this. You get your special moves and they're just set to like triggers instead of being special weapons. That's like the one thing that I think kind of sucks because I loved having actual different weapons to use as just like, base level weapons, and you just swap to them. So it is kind of unfortunate that they're just tied to, you hit like L1 and then you just bust out like a quick little combo move. And I was like, it looks cool, but I would prefer it if they were just weapons that you got to hold on to. And then it's like, hey, you have some magic now. Now you can do the special move. But other than that, it's like having, you still have a different weapon. Like you can use it in a different way. You have a different type of sword, or like this weapon's like a bow staff, or it's like 2 blades, stuff like that. So it was a little unfortunate where I was like, dang, I wish that, and even when they announced it, I was like, dang, that kind of sucks. But it was still fun to play. So I still enjoyed it, and they had like some extra moves on there where if you get enough like good parries in, it'll like automatically activate like one of your specialty moves. So I was like, okay, or like enhance the blade and stuff. And I love the visual when you get like the counter hits, or like even when you do like the final slashes, it turns the whole blade white. I took a ton of pictures in black and white where it was trying to make it look like a manga or something, where the blade is just like pure white, and then it has like little black streaks on it. I was like, this looks like visually, that was a phenomenal image where you do like the slash and then it's just like a pure white blade with like the little streaks, the motion streaks on it. It looks super cool in photo mode. So I was super happy with that. But visuals were fun. The combat I thought was fun. The only thing, I will say this, the only thing that I absolutely hated when I was playing that demo is that square was to block, and I kept hitting square because I'm like, in my head, square is your light attack, triangle's the heavy attack. But in this, triangle's the light attack, and then circle's the heavy attack, where you do like the two-handed, and then square is to block. And that was killing me because I was like, in any other action game in my head, I'm like, square is like my base thing. Square triangle is how I always look at it. But having it be triangle circle was throwing me off like crazy. Like the amount of times I would run in and then I would just stop because I hit the block button, I was like, oh my goodness, I really had to get used to it. And because I spent so much time in photo mode, I barely got used to the combat because I was pausing so long between combat encounters that I'd keep forget. Like I hadn't done it in enough succession to be like, oh yes, square is to block, do not do that. I kind of got it towards the end, especially when I like ended up hitting like the boss fight and stuff. But that was definitely one of those things where I was like, man, I am messing this up. And I even looked to do button mapping to just swap that junk around, and I don't think the option was there, or I just couldn't figure it out. But I was like, oh my goodness, that was the one thing I hated, where I was like, I keep hitting square. Other than that, fantastic. It was a nice long demo. You got to see some cool stuff. It's clearly not even the intro to the game because he already has the gauntlet. We don't see the Oni mode, but we did see it in the trailer. And that was, as the trailer was even playing out, I was like, we might actually see like his Oni mode, which was cool. Like we got a full glimpse of it, but we'll have to wait and see how that pans out and how long it takes to get that in the actual game. But I'm looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I don't even have Pragmata yet, so I might do it in order and be like, I'll eventually get Pragmata. That'll probably go on sale by the time Onimusha comes out, and then it's like, hey, you can get all the Capcom games. It'll be like RE9's on sale and Pragmata's on sale. So I'll probably get Pragmata, finally play through that, and then be able to move on to Onimusha. But very hyped for that game, very hyped. So definitely looking forward to that. Unfortunately, it's also in September. Absolute crazy month. Cannot believe it. They couldn't nobody just thought to push to October. The only thing coming out in October is like the Star Wars game, which wasn't here. That was like the only thing I thought might show up if they did like an official story trailer for it. But that hasn't come up just yet. So maybe during Summer Games Fest we'll get like the official story behind that one. But everything we saw was really good. And like I said, as far as new IP, like really new IP, not spinoffs, we got the Kimuri game. I forgot what it was called, but it was the lady that they introduced Ghostwire Tokyo. And that was funny to see her back. I was like, I'm already interested, and then she popped up, and I was like, okay, well now I'm more interested. So I'm excited for that game. I can't wait to see that one come out. I'll probably end up having I hope that comes to PC. I know that Sony's been like, hey, we're not doing PC ports and all that jazz, but I really don't want to pay for online. So I hope that comes to PC. But it looked really cool, and it was funny when I was watching it play out. I was like, this kind of reminds me of Ghostwire Tokyo, where it was like, it seems like a pseudo open world game with demons and stuff. And then it turned out same woman involved. I'm sure she obviously wasn't the only person that had that idea. But it was just funny looking at it where I'm like, this kind of looks like, like not a kiddier version, but just a more stylish version of Ghostwire Tokyo. And then it was like, yeah, it's sort of in there, the spirit's sort of there. I was like, okay, that works for me. That was more spooky based. This can be more like action anime based. I'm totally fine with that. I love all the different designs and the styles and the character choices. All of it looks cool. Like I said, I'm really hoping that game has a photo mode because it really needs it, because the art on that was already amazing. And I was like, yep, I'm in. And then it's up to 3-player co-op, and we'll just have to, wait and see how it plays as far as the actual story and how the world really does work. But it seems like, especially with her being attached, I'm like, maybe the Ghostwire Tokyo thing isn't too crazy for me to say. But that was definitely like the new, for me, I would say that was like the new surprise that was like, okay, I'm actually kind of hyped for this one. Like, that looks really good. So I'm looking forward to that game. And then jumping straight to the end, God of War Laufe. I'm hyped for that. Going into it, like a lot of people, I was like, oh, I'm curious. I wasn't like a lot of the people you hear online who are just, whining and moaning about it like idiots. But I was curious. I was like, okay, how is it gonna play? Like, I was never concerned because, I'm like, it's like they clearly say that she's a great fighter. So it didn't make any sense that people would be concerned. I thought it was gonna be a prequel. I genuinely didn't even consider the fact that, like, well, what if they did it after she died and it's an actual story going forward? Literally did not occur to me until it started to kick up, and like I heard the music and I was like, hold on, what if it's not a prequel? And it's not. It's literally what happens to her after she dies. That's crazy. I didn't see that coming at all. So I'm super hyped for the story behind that one. And they mixed a couple things together because it looked like it was Chinese mythology and Egyptian mythology like mixed together. I was like, oh, they kind of did both of them. So I'm excited for that. And we might get some more, because it was like, part of it was like, okay, it's an Oni, but Japanese Oni, and then like yokai and stuff like that, like Chinese demons and stuff. It was like, okay, there's some similarities here and there, but it looked more Chinese to me based on like the armor. So I think it's like Chinese mythology and then Egyptian, and then we'll probably have something else. As people pointed out, like, who knows what mythology has a talking cube. That was really funny. I know people are gonna make fun of that. Like, that's gonna be fuel on the the fire for all the anti-woke people who are pissing their pants being angry about it. But there are also a lot of people that are like, it's dumb to call it God of War and things like that. I don't understand that sentiment. I'm like, just make it a spinoff. I can understand it's like, hey, it's not Kratos, so you aren't as invested. I can understand that. And some people even said like they should have just called it something else. But it's like, well, it's a God of War spinoff game, so like it's God of War, and then you put something else underneath it. So for me, I'm just like, I don't care, because it looked amazing. I've even seen people complain about the combat, which is crazy, because in my head, the way I was watching, I was like, first off, she has a jump. I was like, oh, she did it like Kratos, he can't jump anymore. She can jump. She got a double jump. I think at one point she either jumped off the enemy or she got a triple jump. They were doing all the moves, by the way. Like, literally after, I think, the first enemy, she did like some insane, like nearly 10 hit combo. And the first thing I said after that, which who knows when I'll actually get to edit in my reaction, but the first thing I said was like, we're definitely not getting that combo at the beginning of the game. Like, this was God mode, where they put all the moves in at one time. And she was doing stuff where I'm like, I know for a fact that's like the final form of that move. Like, she got the sword, and I was super hyped for that. I was like, okay, you got the sword and you got like the claw ribbons and stuff. I was like, I know that's gonna be used as a weapon. And then as soon as she goes in, she's spinning around, grabbing people with the claws and like jumping towards them and stuff. I was like, some of these combos, I guarantee, are like in-game combos. Like, there's no way all these moves are set right off the top. But the action looked great. We got 20 minutes of gameplay, and of course, because they do very story-based games, the intro to the game is like, hey, here's what's happening. You get like a bit of action. I think we got like 2 actual like real action set pieces, like that that very first moment where she gets like the first like gets the plane sword, and then after that it's more like cutscenes and introductions to like, hey, here's where she is, here are the villains, here's like her new allies, Jack Quaid is a cube, all that good stuff. And the action was insane. Once again, God mode for sure, because there's no way those are like beginning of the game combos, but I am excited to see how that plays out. They also didn't have anything else on the map, or I shouldn't say map, but on the HUD, like as far as the menu. All they showed was health, but I know there's more there, because she was doing some of those moves, and I'm sure they're gonna keep it just like God of War, where it's like, hey, you have a couple cooldowns for this move and then this move, and we'll see what happens as far as the sword versus the ribbons, and then she gets other stuff, and then her having her magic. So I'm excited for that. And then of course they instantly throw in, like, they had the kid that got released, and he was like, that sword isn't what you think it is, and he was like, I'm out of here. So I'm like, okay, they got like a mystery, like crazy demon sword thing going, and talking cube, talking ribbons. She's in the afterlife of the gods, which is just like an amalgamation apparently. So when the gods die, you don't get to kind of skirt off like you thought you would and be like, hey, here's Alfheim and stuff like that, because that's what she said when she got up. She's like, this isn't like the light of Alfheim, and it's like, yep, afterlife of the gods. So kind of like you got lied to a little bit. So that'll be interesting to see how they kind of handle that lore and everything, and have that conversation with the characters about this is what really happens when gods die. So I'm excited. The ending battle was crazy. Like, that one dude, he threw her so hard into the rock, she bounced off of it after it shattered. Like, it was full on Dragon Ball Z. She hit the rock so hard they shattered, and she bounced off. I was like, this is great. Like, it was the opening intro fight sequence and stuff. Also, I doubt that character actually died, because even though she cut him like through the stomach, I think that was a classic, like, I beat you, but you're wounded type of deal, and then he'll come back, a little bit later. So I don't think he's dead. I certainly hope he's not, because I love the design for that dude. Like, I loved his design. I was like, he looks great. So hopefully he sticks around, at least for a little. We can kill him at the end of the game. That'll be fine. So him and his, sexy demon Egyptian wife, we can kill both of them later in the game. But I'm excited to see how that pans out. And then some weird stuff going on with the telescope, and like, I don't even know. And then a giant flying six-legged dog. Like, I'm like, all of this, I'm like, yep, I'm in. Like, they went full on with it. They went straight to 100, like talking cubes, super duper giant flying dogs, the Oni, the serpent Egyptian woman, like just all sorts of madness. They're running the afterlife, I guess. They're like the mob, the mob of the afterlife. So I'm super hyped for that. And the action, to me, to get back to that main point with people complaining about the action, I felt like it was more like old school God of War. I felt like the combat was old school. It just has the new school view, like the camera angle. Obviously, there were some things she was doing that wouldn't be done in the original as well. But for me, I was like, she's jumping, you can jump combos, you can, hit triangle and take people up. They did have the one combo in there, which I loved, where it was, I forgot exactly what the move was, but the visual was exactly the same for Kratos. And I was like, that's cool. You can just throw in some random lore like, oh, they worked on that combo together. Like, it was one for one, the exact same move. And I was like, that's actually kind of awesome. Because it just showed her character. It showed like that little bit of like callback to them. And it's like, oh, they probably trained and use those moves together on enemies, or while they fought, because I'm sure they fought like crazy. And I like the character. She was definitely the character. It makes a lot of sense. Like, once we saw her, it was like her attitude was like, yep, that fits Kratos. Like, both of them, like when it comes down to it, both of them are some angry effing people. Because she went in there super angry. She was fighting the dude, he slammed her on the rock, and she just spit right in his face. Didn't even say anything. Just like, boom, hit you with some spit. I was like, okay, I understand why they ended up together the way they did. But I'm excited for that. I thought it looked phenomenal. I thought the combat was amazing. I was like, okay, it's more action-y. It felt like it was more button mashing because she's a more fluid character. And I'm like, that feels like more, classic God of War to me personally. So I thought it was weird people were complaining. I was like, visually, it's still the new, camera angle and everything. But gameplay-wise, I'm like, this feels like classic God of War coming back just, through a different character. Just like that higher speed where you can just, hit a bunch of buttons and start doing some crazy stuff, and you're flipping and flying all over that place. She also hit the dude, like, she hit him with the Doctor Strange, and she punched his soul out, and I was like, that's crazy. That was, like, the moves that they were doing were nuts. I was like, that's super cool. Once again, into the game stuff, because she, like, hit his spirit or something, and it would turn, like, the soul into, like, a firebomb and would hit other enemies. I was like, there is no effing way that is how that move starts. I'm telling you, they had all the moves in there, like, it's like when you started technically it's the middle of the game, but it's the beginning, so you can see all the powers and then they flash you back. That's what we got to see. It was God mode with all the in-game combos and special abilities and everything. We are not doing that 20 minutes into the game. And if we are, that's gonna be crazy because there's gonna be way more to add. But I think that we just got like an early look. But it was a great look as far as I was concerned. And admittedly, I was shocked they didn't have a date on it. I was like, we saw 20 straight minutes of what looked completely finished. I'm like, this junk is coming out in 2.5 days. Like I was shocked to see that there wasn't even, they didn't even put 2027. I think it's pretty much guaranteed, but they didn't even put that. So I was like, okay, I'm very curious how this is gonna go. Maybe we'll actually see more at Summer Games Fest. This was like, hey, here's 20 minutes. And then maybe when the actual festival, starts kicking up, that's when they're gonna be like, hey, we do actually have a release date and here's a little bit more information. I know there is a director interview that's already been done, which is also like 20 minutes long, by the way, if you haven't checked that out. So I'm gonna look that up a little later while I'm working, and I'll enjoy that and probably get some info, from that video. But all in all, this is a pretty good state of play. I'm excited. Summer Games Fest is officially kicked off. I'm looking forward to getting my Resident Evil info. I want some VR. I want that DLC. I want Code Veronica. And other than that, I just want new stuff. Everything else, I'm like, I guess I'm pretty good. I mean, I think there's a few more random horror games that have shown up that I'd like to see more of that I don't even remember the names of. But other than that, I'm kind of set. Admittedly, I don't need any more games to come out because I was already freaking out. Like, I wanted Resident Evil, Pragmata, Onimusha, Control, Wolverine. I'm like, I already got 5 games. Granted, with everything coming out in September, I guess I'm only gonna have 2 games, and it's gonna be Resident Evil and Control, and then we'll see what happens if people buy me some stuff for my birthday. I guess that's what I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna have to utilize the birthday, which is really unfortunate because the Star Wars game, the racing game, comes out on my birthday, and I was kind of planning on doing that one, but now I'm like, I kind of need Control, and then I need, I got to do my Capcom run for the year, so we'll see how that all pans out. But State of Play. It was good. It was a fun one. I got to see what I wanted to see, minus my Resident Evil content. But other than that, I got to see everything I was hoping for. Got to see some brand new stuff. We got the official, release of the God of War, at least the title and stuff like that for God of War Laufe. So I'm super hyped for that one. But all in all, of course, I want to know what you guys thought. I thought it was great. Would love to know what you thought. What games you wish you got to see. Of course, with it being Summer Games Fest, my main thing is always, well, that sucks. We didn't get to see it here. But it is the beginning of Summer Games Fest. Like, there's no reason that Resident Evil can't randomly pop up at something else. It would be crazy if it popped up at Xbox. It's normally like their own thing. Capcom might even randomly say, hey, we didn't announce it, a week and a half in advance, but here you go, Capcom thing. That only matters to, Capcom Resident Evil people, but it's relevant. It's still there. Also, shout out to that random dinosaur game by Annapurna, because I was like, oh, this looks really cool. Love Annapurna, so I'm curious how that one's going to turn out, because I like their games. So we'll see how that ends up turning out. Just thought about dinosaurs, Dino Crisis, Capcom, all that good stuff. But I'm looking forward to this week. I'm excited to see I'm definitely excited to see what new news we get. I would love it if we got some official info on the last Ronin video game. The movie was canceled, but I think the game is technically still happening. I pray it is. I want that to have a game. But we'll see about all that as the week continues. For now, I want to know what you guys thought of the State of Play. What was good? What was bad? Overall, what was there that you really enjoyed? What was there that you hated? What was a waste of time? So I would love to know what you guys thought, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.